Hello and welcome to The Drift, to our first podcast. Today we're going to talk about towing. And with us, Mr. Clint Allen. Clint, welcome to the show. Welcome to The Drift.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
All right, Towboat US. Tell us about it. Tell us first, let's get to your craziest tow story. Let's come right out of the gate with the crazies. Tell me about your craziest tow.
There are many crazy ones. That's the, what would be my craziest? I don't know. 2 years ago, a fishing boat just outside of New Bedford hit a rock and was taken on water and pretty much was sinking dramatically. And the Coast Guard helicopter arrived and they were unable to retrieve him off the vessel because of all the wires up in the air and the superstructure and all that. So one by one, I removed 7 people off the fishing boat.
So this was before the Coast Guard arrived, or were they?
No, I arrived almost simultaneously. Right. The helicopter was hovering, and that's kind of where I knew where the boat was. I got there as quickly as possible. It was really, really nasty that day. So we strictly stay with recreational. However, this was a Mayday, and people needed help, so we got ourselves involved.
All right, craziest recreational. Do you call them rescues, or what do you call them?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah,
I guess it would be
sure.
termed a rescue, sure. But I don't know. We've had so many. It's crazy. There are so many. Like I said, as we're talking, I'm thinking about, we had a fella a few years ago put his boat, a beautiful boat, too, a pretty expensive vessel. He put it on autopilot and was down below with 2 beautiful women, God knows what, and the boat just ran right up onto a stone jetty at the entrance of the canal, and he
hit hard, so to speak.
Oh my God, it was awful, and just. I had it on autopilot. It's like, well, that's not how it works,
So to that, what would you've seen a lot in the year. How many years have you been doing this?
This is our 16th season owning it. I've been doing it for 18.
And 4 boats.
That's correct.
The 2 out of New Bedford Harbor and...
1 in Westport and 1 in Dartmouth. Right.
So you are, a lot of my boating friends are in Rhode Island, and they're on a Mount Hope Bay and some of Narragansett Bay, and I like to say to them, because we're based in Fairhaven, Mass, is our port of call, and so we're on Buzzards Bay a lot, and some of those Rhode Island bays and some of the smaller bays are like Sebago Lake. We come around West Island there and we hit Buzzards Bay. So you see some serious
Buzzards
weather
Bay is a
out there.
beautiful, beautiful boating area. However, it's just horrible sea conditions. Just 11 o'clock in the afternoon, the predominant southwest wind kicks up, and it's just like a washing machine out there. So it's not pleasant to boat in, but we deal with what we have to.
Given what you've seen, what do you recommend to people? Like if you said, make my life a little easier doing what I do, here's what you shouldn't do, or here's what you should do, what would it be?
The list would be too big.
Right.
Yeah. So number one, I guess if you're new to boating, you really, really ought to take a boating course. Coast Guard auxiliaries offer them. Power Squadron can offer them. Even online, Boat US offers a basic boating course, and it gives you, I guess, basic skills. I mean, basic. It's funny because you can buy an airplane if you have enough money, but you can't fly it without a license. You can buy a motorcycle, but you can't ride it without a license. However, you can buy a boat and just jump in it with absolutely no experience and go out and
that's
use your
amazing.
boat. Amazing.
That's amazing to me. And not only can you buy a boat, you can buy a 60-footer, 65-footer.
If you can afford it, you can buy it with no restrictions. You just, here's the keys and have at it.
So what do you think about that? So I'm definitely not, I'm far from a regulations guy. I think less is more.
Yeah, absolutely.
But when it comes to boating, I don't quite understand why some states like Massachusetts, for example, wouldn't have already got into a licensing program or a licensing game for boating. I wonder why they've stayed away from that. I think in some cases it's good, but from a safety perspective, I don't know that it is.
Yeah, and I'm not sure, because Massachusetts, we're run by the government, and
Right.
they're always involved, it seems. But there are some states that are implementing it. Massachusetts does have for under 16, I believe it is, if you want to do a jet ski or any motorized vessel, you have to take a course. My sons took it way back in the day. They were like 12 years old. And that allows you to run a boat. But adults, no. Like you said, you go to the
Right.
bank,
That's
buy
pretty
the
crazy.
boat, and,
Yeah.
and have at it, you know.
What are some of the more common calls? What are your everyday calls? Garden variety, guy. Do you deliver fuel? Do you?
Right. So typically we do towing more than fuel deliveries, but we do deliver fuel. We jump start your vessel. A lot of times people go over to Cuttyhunk or wherever their destination is, Hadley Harbor, and hang out for the weekend, and then discover that their battery's been drained for the last 3 days. So we can give jump starts, but it's not all that common. It's weird because when we get a call for a breakdown, it's just my engine isn't running, and we don't really try to figure out, it's okay, we're on our way to help you out. So we don't really examine what their actual problem is. But I would say engine failure is what we put on our invoice,
Right.
engine failure.
And
And
then-
that's a very common, my engine's not running, and won't
Right.
stay running, or it's, you can't get it started,
So that might be another tip for people. Look, if you're at mooring, you're at anchor, you're spending the day, think about what battery you're on
Right.
and what your drain is,
Right.
because that, typically it's the end of the day, right? When you're pulling anchor and heading in.
Right.
And that's when you don't want to lose a battery.
Yes, and it's very common, like you said, I guess with a selector switch, you could
Right.
keep your starting battery isolated, so
Yep.
when the time comes to leave, you switch it to your starting battery and it's not depleted. But,
Absolutely.
it happens all the time. Not very, very common. I would say, like I said, mostly we do more towing than we do battery jump starts.
But I've seen, looking on your Facebook page, you guys are diving, you're pumping out, you're raising boats, you're dealing with harder ground situations. Tell me more about that, sort of that next level work that you do as well.
Well, so that's where it kind of, if you're soft aground there, and I don't even know where that terminology came from.
Hard to
Because-
soft aground?
Yeah, I mean, it's just what the boaters use, but I guess in the maritime law, there's no such thing as hard or soft aground. But we'll say, for our purposes, soft aground is if you're on a sandbar and I can pull you off with one vessel, no specialized equipment, it's covered under your Boat US policy. So you'd get removed from that sandbar and back underway on your own for free.
All right.
Now, if you're in a rocky situation on a rocky shoreline and you're in a jam, and you'd know that as a boater, that you're not soft aground, you're in a real perilous situation, pounding on the rocks, then that's a salvage. And salvage is covered by your insurance policy, your hull insurance policy. All our policy is for
So
towing.
very, very interesting. You still do the work, but the payment for that as a salvage is covered by your boating
Boat
insurance.
insurance,
So
hull
how-
insurance.
So when is that determination made, I guess?
So, and we're very transparent with the boater, or try to be. They always downplay it, or most
Right,
times.
sure.
"Well,
I'm soft aground. I'm on a sandbar.
And,
I can wait for the tide, right?
Right,
Sure.
right, those type of situations. But if you're in a perilous situation, you know you are.
Right.
You can hear the fiberglass grinding
Right,
underneath the
got it.
rocks. You know you need to get off. And at that point, we tell them, Cap, this is a salvage. Depending on the situation, sometimes beforehand, we like to get a contract signed.
Okay.
Sometimes it's after the occurrence. But in any event, it's salvage. And it's going to be strictly covered by your insurance policy, not the Towboat US policy.
And the same, I would gather, for a sinking. If you're
Right.
If
So
you're
now, if
sunk
we,
at-
the rule again, we have industry standards or industry rules. So if we put a pump on your vessel, you're taking on water to any degree. If you need a pump to keep you afloat, you're in a salvage situation. Again, that's not covered by your towing policy. So there's a lot of controversy about that. What I say is I'm the most honest guy in the world.
Right.
And you have to be.
Yeah.
Because if I do you wrong in your marina and there's 600 boats in the marina or
hear about it.
60 boats in the marina, it
Right.
doesn't matter. If I treat you or mistreat you, all 60 of those fellow marine people in the marina are going to know. So well, I don't know. That's not forcing me to be honest, but I'm just an honest guy, and I want to be. I don't want to do anybody wrong. If you're in a salvage situation, we'll let you know. And like I said, it's a controversial thing because a lot of people downplay it. Oh, I was fine. I was fine.
Right. Yeah.
And we record our VHF in our office.
Okay.
And, sometimes we'll play that back and say, well, does this sound like you
on
were fine?
water.
Well, please
Yeah,
help
right,
me. Get boat
right.
out here quickly,
Yeah.
So, and that sort of stuff. But, emotions are running high, of course.
Absolutely.
Your prized possession is up on the rocks.
Yep.
And,
And it can happen quick.
oh, yeah.
It can happen, especially in Buzzards Bay. And,
It amazes me. It amazes me. We just did one the other day. The fellow was up on a soft beach, and it was a soft ungrounding, not a salvage, covered by his. But after I got him off, I'm like, why didn't you put your anchor out?
Yeah.
Well, I was fiddling around with the motor. I said,
Yeah,
the
always.
first thing on a lee
Good
shore,
tip. Right, there's another tip.
drop your anchor, then fiddle
Any
with your
issues,
motor.
get the hook in, right? Drop the anchor,
And the
get
more
secure.
the more severe the wind, the faster you need to get your anchor out on a lee shore. You're going to be on that shoreline very, very quickly, quicker than most people expect.
Talk about, for those who might be watching who don't know, what is a lee?
All right, so the wind is blowing from your left side
To the shore.
The land is blowing to the shore. You are eventually going to get blown. Most of the time, when you're just drifting, your boat goes abeam, so you're
Right.
sideways to the wind. So you've got the full effect of your whole boat being blown down towards the shoreline.
And you've lost your power. You have no control.
No
You're
means of
getting blown
propulsion.
towards rocks or
Right.
shore or what
Right.
or hazards. Drop the hook.
We
Drop
hear
the
it
anchor.
all the time because when they call our office, it's the first thing we tell them is everybody safe? First
Right.
question. Oh yeah, I'm fine. Would you deploy your anchor, sir? Well, I'm drifting, and I'm like, well, yeah, but
right.
two reasons. It's easier for us to find you once you've given us your coordinates and we know where you are, and safety reasons. Because what happens, we find, is they'll at the last minute put their anchor out. Then we get a return phone call. Hurry up, my anchor's dragging.
Yeah.
Well, Cap, if you would have put your anchor out 20 minutes ago
Right.
and we asked you to,
Why is that? Why is that so important to put the anchor out right away?
because just like I said, sometimes it doesn't hook up. So
Right.
now you've got that 20 extra minutes to fiddle around with it, let more scope out. The more scope you have out, scope meaning the length of the line,
Yep.
let as much line as you can, the greater the scope, the better the hooking ability. A lot of people don't do that or know that. So if you would have put it out when I asked you to put it out, and now you encounter that it's not really grabbing good, you've still got a lot of time before you get yourself in a jam. We get it all the time. Hurry up, I'm
Right.
dragging anchor,
Right.
I'm almost on shore.
So call you first. Hail on either VHF or cell phone.
Right.
Right. What's the best way to go there? By the way.
All right, so that's another controversial. Everybody has a cell phone nowadays.
Right. And that, I think the issue in that is people aren't making certain they A, know how to use a VHF radio, and B, make sure it's working and the antennas are working properly and it's wired. Because as we know, the cell phone, where we are, it's pretty good, right? But you start to get offshore in
There
dead
are
zones, you could have a problem.
A lot of dead zones. So, and again, you don't know that because you're so calm and you're driving around in your vehicle on land and your cell phone works perfectly. And it works to a certain extent out there as well. But Cuddy Hunk, there's a lot of dead zone areas. Gay Head on the Vineyard, another dead zone area.
Right.
Quicks Hole, even like the center of
Every day.
Quicks Hole, you lose service for maybe.
And God forbid if you need to put in a rescue call there, right?
Yeah, so our VHF radio, you should have a working VHF radio, not a handheld. A handheld's okay for backup, but
So
a fixed,
wired,
a fixed mount,
VHF,
right?
good antenna.
Right, and you should do radio checks periodically, or even every time you get underway.
So, as far as dropping anchor goes, there are some people out there that don't have anchors. Don't ask me why, but they don't have anchors on their boat.
Right. Right.
And again, some people might say, look, I don't fish, I don't drop anchor in bays or inlets, but what do I need an anchor for? What do they need an anchor for?
Well, we tell them kidding around, you try to be subtle with them, but you wouldn't go out in your car without brakes.
Right.
At some point, you're going to need, you may have to stop that boat. And, naturally, if you're heading towards the rocks and the conditions we talked about, your engine fails. Right. You have to stop your boat. You have to be able to secure it, or otherwise you're going to be in big, big trouble. But it is amazing. We encounter people that don't have anchors.
Right. Well, think about that. If you don't have an anchor, okay, if you don't have an anchor, you lose your cell phone. You don't have any VHF radio. What do you do?
Right. You're at the mercy of Mother Nature.
Right.
Yeah. And it can end up being a life or death situation.
Right.
And again, we talked about that earlier. People just don't have the knowledge. You just buy a boat and just go out and don't realize it can be a dangerous thing. On the ocean, I think, on a lake or something, it's still dangerous, but not nearly. An ocean can get very, very dangerous.
And then you get out there and you see some of these guys in smaller boats. The fisherman, he's out off of the vineyard in an 18-footer, and it just makes you wonder. You go, well, be aware of what you're in.
I check the weather report every morning. Not that we all know the weathermen are 50-50, but I check the NOAA wind report every morning. And, we do this for a living. That's our job, but I want to know what I'm going to encounter later on in the day. But I think back when I was a recreational boater myself, I never brought my family out into conditions that would going to deteriorate.
Exactly.
If you knew that it was going to get windy in the afternoon, I'd be home before the bad weather come and hit. Sometimes you can't help it. Squalls come through, sudden thunderstorms, stuff like that. But I always made sure of my journey was planned out and planned out safely. A lot of people don't do that. They just get on the boat and then will encounter, I didn't realize it was going to be this windy. Well, apparently you didn't read the weather report.
Yeah, where did this come from?
Yeah, or listen to the news. I've known for 3 days that this was going to be windy on Wednesday.
It's not 1938, right?
So again, it's amazing, that we hear that a lot. Gee, I didn't realize it was going to get this windy. Oh, I knew it was going to. How come?
Right.
Right. So
let me ask you about to the origins of Towboat US. So back in the mid-'80s, when the Coast Guard, there was funding cuts, and the Coast Guard was focused more on drug enforcement, they decided, look, when I was a kid, if you had an issue, you called the Coast Guard, they came and towed you in.
Right.
A non-emergency tow, they just towed you to port. And if not for the Coast Guard, right, it was a buddy who towed you in. When did that change? How did that change? And that was sort of the catalyst for Towboat US, right?
Yeah, well, like you said, back in the 80s or late 80s, the Coast Guard their focus changed. Their drugs were huge, I guess, in southwest Florida and all that. So their focus changed. And I guess budget-wise, they said, well, we got to stop towing these fishing boats. It was mostly fishing. They did some recreational. And at the same time, Boat US was developed and started towing vessels. Little by little, they were all over the country. So now the Coast Guard's saying, well, we don't want to interfere with the Boat US companies because they're trying to make a living. So that kind of really, really stopped them from interfering or towing, not interfering, but towing recreational vessels. And then it just got bigger and bigger and bigger until present day. The Coast Guard is a huge ally of ours. Right. We work very closely with the Coast Guard. And then, all government agencies, actually.
And then there are issues with liability. So the guy's not being a bum if you say, hey, I'm out of gas, my engine has failed, would you tow me in? And he says, you know what, I can't.
That's another controversial, very controversial as well, because the old wives' tale is that a lot of boaters think that you have to help another boater.
Right.
And I'm not saying you shouldn't, but by helping them, you can just make a phone call. Say, listen, I'm going to stand by with you.
Stay here with you.
I'm going to call the local Boat US and make sure you're safe.
Right.
And that is actually helping.
Right.
You don't have to give them, tow them in. And that is, like I said, it's an old wives' tale. You hear that a lot. Well, you have to tow that boat in. No, you don't have. You have to help them, and you should help them. But by helping them, you can just make a simple phone call.
Right. I think your insurance company would tell you differely.
Well,
right?
and like I said,
Liability reasons
society's
and-
changed
right.
nowadays. Society's changed, and you're doing somebody a favor, but inadvertently you scratch their boat,
Right.
and now they're suing you.
Yeah.
So,
You
listen,
scratched my anchor.
right.
Right.
We're professional. We train relentlessly to do this job, and we're going to get you back safely. And we're insured if something does go wrong. So we always tell people that. Just give us a call. Don't get involved. We had a fellow one time. I was going to get him, and it was Father's Day. I forget what year it was. I think I forget. It was a few years back. Anyways, he called us for a tow, but he said, my buddy's towing me,
Right.
and when you rendezvous with me, he'll drop the tow and you can bring me back to Fairhaven. And I said, okay, fine as kind. It was a miserable day out that day, very, very windy. On my way to get him at Quick's Hole, I heard a Mayday call. I didn't know that it was him. It was just too much going on, but I heard Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. And unfortunately, he died that day.
No kidding.
He was getting towed by a friend. Quick's Hole was wind against current, very, very nasty. It was like a washing
bit
machine.
for people who aren't from our area. Quick's Hole it takes down big fishing boats. And that
Dangerous
can turn up
passage.
Very dangerous.
Dangerous
right?
passage in the right conditions. And
Right.
this particular day was wind against current, and that poor fella died because of a
Terrible.
friend trying to help him.
Right.
And so, I mean, that again, we tell people leave it to the professionals.
Yep.
We train on this relentlessly.
Let's talk about that. So you got into the business when? Your background is what? So it's interesting.
Okay, so I've done a lot of things in my life, but I was a commercial fisherman.
Okay.
Then I was fortunate enough to get on a fire department.
Yep.
And so I was on the fire department for, I think, 21 years, I believe. And prior to getting off the fire department, I got my Coast Guard license. And my intention was to run striped bass charters.
Okay.
That's what I figured I'd do for a little part-time job. Well, a local Towboat US fella found out I had my license. We were in the same marina. And he said, gee, you want a job working with me? So I figured I'd try it, and I did. I worked for him for 2 years.
It's great. Summer weekends off.
Yeah.
All summer off, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Anything but,
Yeah,
right?
you get to
You take your
watch the
vacations in
fireworks.
February, right?
Well, and
Yeah,
that's
you get to watch the
it's
fireworks.
funny you say that
That's a good
because-
pitch job.
Right, we do. We go to Florida in the winter, and when the season's over, we go, oh, thank God
right.
this is over, because it's 24/7.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, 24/7. So there's no drinking, there's no parties. It's
Exactly.
we work,
Gotta be
and-
ready.
Yeah, I have to be ready all the time.
But,
yeah.
but like you said, no partying. You got to be ready to go.
Right.
You're not taking any summer weekends off.
Right,
You know, you and people who run ice cream shops. I guess you're in the same boat, so to speak. So,
Right.
so, anyways, how does the process work? You get a call at the office. Again, either hailed by radio or a cell phone call. You're stationed where? Are you stationed at the docks or?
So typically we have one captain underway and during the daylight hours.
Yep.
Typically they get on about 8 a.m. and they're underway on the boat, either fishing, sightseeing, or just sitting on the boat reading a book. But
Sure.
there's someone on the boat typically from 8 to 5.
Okay.
And when we get the call, we dispatch them.
There you go.
And then when one captain is underway going to do a job, sometimes we get multiple jobs, 3, 4 at a time. So the second captain will get called and say, hey, Casey's underway, Captain Casey's underway, can you get on the boat and be ready? You're up next,
So now let's do a little bit of the sales pitch for you. A lot of people think, well, I've got towing insurance via my marine insurance, my boat insurance, my hull insurance. Does that cover what I need, or what would you recommend for a boat or for a package for insurance? Do you just stick with that, and who do you call? Do you still call you, even though I don't have a Towboat US plan? How does it work?
So we love to talk about this, so it's knowledge for the boater. And again, a lot of boaters don't know. I have towing on my insurance
Right.
policy. So we look it over with a fine-tooth comb and say, well, what's your policy? How much do you have? Oh, I have $300. Usually that's $250, 500 and 1,000. That's typically what you'll
Okay.
see on an insurance policy. None of them are enough.
So how far will $300 get me? If I had 300 on my hull insurance and I called you, what's it going to get me?
Nothing.
Right.
Where we get paid, how this works for us is if you're a non-member, which you would not be a member of Boat US, we're going to charge a non-member rate, and it's an hourly rate, and our hourly rate would exceed the $300 of towing that you have on your policy. So the minute I turn my key on, you're already in the negative.
Right.
So
Okay.
that's the problem with that. So we always ask how much, and it's not enough. 500. Well, 500. That's not enough.
Right.
Because that's only 2 hours of towing.
Okay.
And typically, I guess statistically, they say the average tow is 3 to 3.5 hours average.
Okay.
So based on those numbers, you'd need
Doesn't
upwards
make
of
sense.
$1,500 on your policy. Ours is unlimited.
So unlimited for how much a year?
Okay, so it's we have 2 different policies. One we sell to trailer. If you're trailering your boat,
Right.
that's called the unlimited package. That one is $159 annually. So it's from the day you sign up. It expires at the end of the month. Always at the end of the month, no matter what day you sign up. So if you signed up today, it would expire at the end of July. So
Okay.
today is July 2nd, I believe. It would expire 2020
Okay.
at the end of July. The other package we have is the Unlimited Gold. We sell that to mooring or slip customers. And that is, the difference between the two is if you needed service from your slip, the Gold would pay to tow you out of your slip to a repair facility
Okay.
or a boat ramp
Right.
if you needed to get
Right.
hauled out.
Makes sense.
So that's the 2 differences. And that package is $175 annually.
So Clint, this is dinner at the marina. I mean, this is the Best Buy on the water when you think about it.
We always try
Right.
to tell people that. I always tell people, listen, I'm not a salesman.
Yeah.
Because one way or another, we're going to tow you.
Right.
You're going to call whether you're a member or not.
Yep.
We don't like to do that because then you have to use your credit card. And that takes the fun out of boating. I always use an example. If you hit a rock out in the ocean, Cuttyhunk, and you call us to tow you in, you know the whole tow back, you're saying, oh my God, this is going to cost me $3,000 to replace this outdrive that I've just
Right.
ruined. When I get you to the dock and I tell you, okay, good luck with your outdrive, you don't owe me anything.
Yeah, that's a good feeling.
That's a good feeling.
Right.
Versus saying, hey, now you owe me $1,500 for
Yeah.
the tow in. It could ruin your season.
and that tow is back to your home port.
Back to where you came from, right.
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 That's-
So,
yeah.
I mean, again, that $1,500 might put you over the edge, and I just can't afford this. I'll pay you, but I'm done boating. I can't fix my boat now. I just don't have enough money. And that is the circumstances. Some people just can't afford it. So if you had the towing, and I tell you, you don't owe me any money, Cap, that's a
Right.
good feeling. That's a
All
good
right.
feeling.
Cap, here's what we're going to do. You've invited us on a ride along. We're going to do that
Yep.
coming up, and we're going to see what it's like to be out there with you.
Yeah, that would
But
be that'd be fun.
Until then, thanks for your time. You have valuable information. Captain Clint Allen,
Thank you so
Towboat
much.
US.
This was great.
thanks
Thank
for being
you.
on the drift. We'll see you out there.
All right, thank you.
All right.